The courtroom air was already taut with tension before she even entered. Reporters had their notepads ready, phones silenced, eyes wide, waiting for what was promised to be a dramatic day of testimony. The judge sat in still contemplation, as if anticipating the kind of truth that doesn't just alter cases, it alters culture. Then the door opened. Gwen Stefani stepped in. Not as a singer, not as a fashion icon, but as a witness. She walked slowly, flanked by two federal marshals carrying what looked like a small black velvet-wrapped object. No cameras were allowed inside, yet it wouldn't have mattered. Every breath, every rustle of fabric, every blink was captured by the hearts and minds of everyone in that room. Gwen reached the stand, her nerves visible, but her spine straight. The judge acknowledged her with a nod, and the clerk asked her to raise her right hand. She did. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do," she said, voice steady. Then she unwrapped the velvet bundle, revealing a worn, leather-bound planner. Gasps echoed quietly in the room. She placed it on the wooden surface like it was both sacred and cursed. "I wasn't planning to be here," she began, voice softer now, "but I couldn't stay silent once I realized what I had and who it belonged to." She glanced toward Ariana Grande, seated near the front row, hands trembling slightly in her lap. Gwen's words slowed. "Years ago, a stylist named Nia Rosario worked with me during a world tour. She was private, soft-spoken, brilliant with her hands, but she had this shadow. Loud noises startled her. Some days, after a phone call, she'd fall into complete silence. I never pushed. I should have." Gwen paused. "Then one day she just didn't show up. No goodbye, no message. She disappeared." Her eyes scanned the room, landing again on the judge. "A few weeks later, while cleaning out one of my old tour trunks, I found this planner. I recognized it as hers immediately. I didn't open it for a long time. It felt wrong, like it wasn't mine to see. So I kept it and waited for her. She never came back." She tapped the planner once, gently. "But after I heard what Ariana testified to last week, I pulled it out again. And what I found, what I read, made it impossible to stay silent." With the court's permission, she opened the planner and turned it to a page. The projection system flickered to life, scanning the entry onto a large screen. The handwriting was looped, frantic, desperate. One phrase written in red ink at the top of the page read, "7C is not a room, it's a sentence." Murmurs erupted. The judge banged the gavel once. "Silence in the court." Jurors leaned forward. The defense team shuffled uncomfortably. "She described a place," Gwen continued, "not just physically, but psychologically. She called it isolation protocol. She drew floor plans, labeled names, timelines. She listed interactions with specific people, many of whom have already been named in this trial." The prosecution asked if any of the names were directly tied to current testimony. Gwen nodded. She referenced someone who always smiled when they screamed. She flipped to another page. She called him the architect. The word hit the room like a whip crack. She wrote that he didn't just show up, he was summoned, whenever someone got too close to the truth. The prosecution pressed her gently. "Do you recognize this person?" Gwen inhaled. "Yes, I didn't at first. But after thinking back, after seeing some of the surveillance photos shown earlier, I know who he is." A picture was displayed on the monitor, a grainy image from a private event hosted by Combs Global. A man stood at the edge of the frame. No name, no interaction, just presence. Gwen pointed. That's him. Always wore the same watch. Never smiled, never introduced himself. But he was always there. Close enough to whisper in Diddy Combs' ear, far enough to remain invisible. The court recorder's fingers stopped moving for just a moment. The tension was now alive, breathing, growing, real. Another page of the planner was projected. This one held a detailed timeline. Entered at 11:42 p.m. No sign-out, no exit record, no call allowed, escorted by security, ordered by D. Gwen looked up. This is the first time she referenced him directly. Diddy Comb. The defense jumped in, objecting on grounds of hearsay and unverifiable authorship. The judge leaned forward. The handwriting has been authenticated by 2 witnesses. The location descriptions match previous sworn testimony. The objection is overruled. Gwen's fingers trembled slightly as she turned to another page. She mentioned someone Ariana without saying her name, but she wrote, "If I disappear, it's because she asked the wrong questions." The entire room turned toward Ariana Grande. Her eyes brimmed with tears. Gwen closed the planner slowly, her voice now low and firm. She was writing this for Ariana, for anyone who would listen, for anyone who might one day connect the dots. The prosecution approached the bench. "We formally submit this planner into evidence," they said, "as corroborating proof of isolation protocol and unlawful detainment under the direction of Mr. Diddy Comb." The judge accepted. Then something unexpected happened. Gwen spoke again, unprompted. She came to me, not long before she vanished. She asked me if I believed in justice. I told her I did. She smiled and said, "Good, then keep this safe. One day it'll make sense." Gwen closed her eyes for a beat. I thought she meant it personally. I had no idea she meant this. As she stood to step down, she passed within a few feet of Diddy Comb. He sat motionless, jaw clenched, eyes cast downward, silent for the first time since the trial began. Gwen exited the stand, but the story had only just begun, because as she walked away, the prosecutor announced their next witness. "We call to the stand," he said clearly, "a former events coordinator from Combes Global who has first-hand knowledge of Room 7C. As the new witness entered, everyone's attention turned away from Gwen. But she wasn't done. In the back of the courtroom, she sat beside Ariana, gently took her hand, and whispered, "She never stopped hoping you'd ask. And now you did." The lights dimmed again. The planner was only the beginning. The witness took the stand with shoulders tense and fingers tapping lightly against the wooden rail. He looked like someone who had not slept in days, and in truth, he hadn't. Introduced only as a former events coordinator at one of Diddy Combs' premier labels, his name wasn't the headline, but what he carried was. As he sat, he pulled a small black USB from his coat and handed it to the bailiff without a word. The court technician loaded it silently. The screen behind the judge blinked to life. "State your role," the prosecutor said calmly. The man took a breath. "I coordinated travel, hospitality, access for events tied to Combes Global. That was my official job." The prosecutor nodded. "Unofficially?" The man hesitated, then answered, "I managed rooms." The silence in the courtroom became physical. "What do you mean, rooms?" Some guests, artists, influencers, staff were designated for special protocols before or after key events. They were labeled emotional, erratic, or simply a privacy risk. They were escorted to specific rooms. I didn't ask why. I was told not to. He looked down. One of those rooms was 7C. A murmur spread like static. The prosecution asked what he meant by designated. The screen behind them changed. Emails, dozens of them. Highlighted lines. Guest 42 showed signs of distress, reroute to 7C. No comms, no family contact, handler present. AG is asking questions. Caution. The initials hung in the air. Ariana Grande. The man confirmed it with a slow nod. Yes, she was flagged as high visibility, high risk. Then the screen changed again, this time a spreadsheet. Title, Influencer Threat Index. Each column had a label. Name, visibility score, trust level, risk of exposure, suggested protocol. 2 names stood out immediately. Gwen Stefani dormant. Low risk unless activated. Ariana Grande elevated. History with prior asset. Flagged for external questioning. The jurors looked visibly shaken. One woman clutched her pen tighter, her knuckles white. These aren't just notes, the prosecutor said. These are ratings, a system. The man nodded. Everything ran through the system. Every whisper, every tweet, every sudden request for information, it was logged, monitored, interpreted. And the people? The prosecutor asked. The ones labeled unstable? The witness's voice cracked. That was the most dangerous label. Once you were called that, the public stopped listening. The press would eat it up. And inside the company, it meant you were no longer protected. You were expendable. The lights dimmed slightly as the next slide appeared, a flowchart. Each path led to one designation, contained. This is how the system worked, the man said. It wasn't just abuse. It was structured, reviewed, automated. It was built to erase people quietly. And what was your role in all this? I followed orders, he replied. I coordinated who went where. I sent people to those rooms. I handed off their phones. I lied about delays. I even comforted some of them, told them it was just a precaution. I didn't know everything, but I knew enough. The prosecutor pointed to a message on the screen. Naya, Rosario, no external logs, no exit recorded, cleared. The room fell dead silent. What does cleared mean? Neutralized, the man said. Legally, socially, career-wise, sometimes worse. But officially, it meant, do not expect them back. Ariana's eyes welled again. Gwen sat motionless, lips trembling. The prosecutor continued. You're saying the system targeted not just celebrities but staff? Yes. There were 2 tiers, the man said. Influencers and influencer adjacent. Hairstylists, makeup artists, choreographers, anyone who was close enough to witness something but didn't have a big enough voice to be believed on their own. The screen changed again. An image, a scanned, handwritten note. The courtroom leaned forward. It read, I gave it to Gwen. If anything happens, she's the one I trust. She doesn't know yet, but she'll remember me. She always asked how I was, even when no one else did. It was signed, Nia. At that, Ariana broke down, her face buried in her hands. Maya Rosario was not in the room yet, but everyone felt her presence lingering, like a ghost refusing to vanish. Gwen wiped her eyes and nodded silently as if saying, I hear you now. The witness continued. We were told it was for their safety. that these guests were emotionally unstable. But every time someone asked the wrong question, the same thing happened. They were isolated, monitored, removed. "And Diddy Combe?" the prosecutor asked. "Did he know?" The man looked up for the first time. He didn't sign every order, but nothing moved without his approval. He played golf with the architect. He joked about it. He said, "Better a meltdown in silence than a PR storm." "Did you hear him say that?" "Yes, more than once." "And the architect, did you see him?" "Often," the man said. "He wasn't just a man. He was a presence. People froze when he entered a room. He never had a name, only initials, but if you saw him, it meant someone was in trouble." The screen shifted again. A grainy surveillance image, a hallway, a steel door, a brass plate, 7C. "Is this the room?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes. And is this man—" The image was zoomed in. A figure in a black suit, blurred but visible. "That's him." "The architect?" "Yes." The judge allowed the photo to be entered into sealed record. Then something else happened. A sealed envelope was handed to the prosecutor. "Arrived that morning. Anonymous sender." Handwritten words across the flap. She wasn't the only one. Inside were 4 photos, each one a shot of the same hallway, each one time-stamped, each one showing different people being escorted into 7C, faces blurred, locations real. In the last image, standing just beyond the camera frame, was the architect again. Watching, not moving, always watching. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said, "this system is not theoretical. It's documented, it's digital, it's human." The judge looked toward the jury. "We have now seen multiple forms of evidence, all pointing toward a coordinated system of silence, manipulation, and suppression tied directly to Mr. Diddy Combs' enterprise." The defense didn't speak. They were frozen. The gallery sat stunned. Outside, social media was catching fire. Room 7C. How she wasn't the only one. Gwen remembers. The names were connecting. The voices were rising. But the planner was no longer the only piece of truth. The USB had opened the gates. The records were real. And the system so carefully hidden was now fully exposed. The courtroom was not just listening. It was transforming. And the next witness, waiting quietly in the wings, was not a celebrity. She was someone who had watched it all and kept a journal of her own. The court remained under a thick hush as the next witness approached the stand, this time escorted by U.S. Marshals, one on either side, like shadows assigned to truth. Her name wasn't on any leaked list, not whispered among reporters or hinted at on social media. She had remained a ghost until now. Her name was Kendra Hayes. She stood slender, composed but pale, and clutched a slim notebook close to her chest like it was both her shield and her confession. Her eyes flicked across the room but landed quickly and firmly on Gwen Stefani, then Ariana Grande. She gave a single nod, a silent signal. "I'm ready." Once sworn in, she spoke. "I was a personal assistant at Combs Global for almost 7 years. For the last 3, I worked directly under one of the executives who, based on everything shown here, operated as what you've called the architect." The gallery leaned forward, as though one collective heartbeat beat louder now. "He never gave his name. He used initials, burner phones. Meetings were always private. Sometimes in soundproof conference rooms, other times in parked vehicles with engines running. Everything filtered through him." The prosecutor asked her what her job had entailed. I coordinated movement, not for artists, but for staff. The ones who started asking questions, the ones who got scared. I was told to reassign them, redirect them, silence them gently if possible. If not, 7C. She looked down at her notebook. I took notes, quietly, in shorthand, in symbols, but I recorded it all. The prosecutor asked if she was willing to submit her notebook to the court. She stepped down, handed it directly to the judge. I kept it hidden in a box labeled Old Recipes at my grandmother's house. I didn't trust anyone else. The courtroom was still. The judge nodded for the technician to project its contents. The first scanned page appeared. Coordination order. VIP guest listed unstable. Redirect to room 7C. Notify D planner in play. Confirm destruction. Eyes on GS. Ariana shifted in her seat. Gwen inhaled sharply. Kendra continued. I didn't understand everything at first. I was young, eager, and terrified. But I knew something was wrong when one conversation changed everything. The prosecutor leaned in. What conversation? The day Nia Rosario disappeared, I overheard something I wasn't supposed to. I walked into a meeting late, no one saw me. I heard them say, "We have eyes on Ariana. If she keeps pushing, send someone close to Gwen. Don't spook her. Influence her." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Gwen froze. That's when I knew this wasn't random. It wasn't overreaction. It was targeted, calculated. She turned toward the jury. They never expected Gwen to notice. They thought she was too busy, too disconnected, and they never expected Ariana to push. That was their mistake. Another page flashed on screen. An internal PDF titled Containment Protocol for High-Influence Assets. It looked corporate, branded, formatted like any standard HR policy, only it wasn't. It listed names, celebrity tier rankings, risk scores, suggested methods of neutralization, Ariana Grande high visibility, redirect through charity scrutiny, Gwen Stefani, dormant status, monitor distance, activate only if compromised, Nia Rosario, unstable, contained. The word hit the room like a crack of lightning. Contained. Not suspended, not dismissed, not protected. A human being, cataloged like an object. Kendra looked down again, steadying herself. There was a secondary list, influencer adjacent. It included stylists, dancers, bodyguards, anyone who could be influenced, used, or discarded if too visible. And the term architect? Did you know who it was? Not his real name, but he operated at the highest level. Even Diddy deferred to him sometimes. He gave orders no one questioned, not even the legal team. Did you ever meet Diddy personally? Kendra hesitated, then said, Yes, only once. It was at an event after Nia disappeared. I heard him laugh and say, "Some people talk too much and wonder why they disappear. That's not magic. That's maintenance." The room fell into stunned silence. And this was in reference to? He never said her name. But I knew. Everyone knew. Did you feel complicit? Every day. I still do. That's why I'm here. The judge paused, visibly shaken. The prosecutor shifted toward the jury. We've now seen 2 independent journals, one from Gwen, one from Kendra. Same terminology, same symbols, same outcomes. This was not a pattern. This was a system. But the revelations were not over. The court recessed briefly, and outside, whispers turned to waves. Social media was exploding again. Burns' The Blueprint trended in 43 countries. Artists began pulling endorsements in real time. Fans began revisiting old photos of Nia in backstage moments with Gwen, spotting her like a ghost in the background of fame. When court resumed, the prosecution didn't call another human witness. They called a voice. Maya Rosario, Nia's sister. Introduced under protective identity until now, she stepped into the courtroom holding a single silver recorder. Her face was calm but drawn, like someone who had waited too long to sleep. "My sister didn't break," she said. "She was buried." Then she pressed play. Nia's voice filled the courtroom, soft and shaky. "If you're hearing this, I'm gone, or close to it. I tried to stay quiet, invisible, but Ariana asked questions. She was too kind to ignore the fear in my eyes. That's when they marked me." The room stopped breathing. "They told me 7C was a safe room, but when I got there, the door locked behind me. There was no window, just a speaker that said, 'You brought this on yourself.'" Ariana gripped Gwen's hand. Maya looked straight ahead, refusing to flinch. Nia's voice trembled. "Tell them about the architect. He's not a nickname. He's real. He made the lists. Diddy knew. I saw them together, laughing, picking names like cards." The tape ended with a final line. "Don't let them erase me. If you ever cared, speak louder than they ever expected you to." Maya looked at the judge. "I just did." Then she walked to Gwen and Ariana. No words, just an embrace, a circle completed, a voice carried, a promise kept. No one moved, no one spoke, not even Diddy. His face had changed, not the swagger of a mogul, but the stillness of a man realizing that the game wasn't just over, it had flipped. The court recessed again. But outside the courthouse, a storm had already begun to gather. Because Nia Rosario's story wasn't a rumor anymore. It had a voice, a date, a family, a name. And the planner Gwen had once buried in a storage box was now evidence not just of abuse but of an empire's rot. The system wasn't just showing cracks, it was falling apart. Piece by piece, voice by voice. The final day of the trial began not with testimony but with a hush so heavy it felt like memory shared, unbearable and unshakable. The courthouse was surrounded by people holding signs that read "Justice for Nia" and "Room 7C was real." News vans lined the street. Supporters wore shirts printed with Gwen's silhouette holding the planner. Ariana's fans gathered in silence, heads bowed. This wasn't just a trial anymore, it was a reckoning. Inside the courtroom, the jury returned with solemn expressions. But before they could deliver anything, the prosecution asked the judge for one final allowance. "We would like to introduce expert testimony," the lead attorney said, "to help the court and the public understand not just what happened, but what it did to those who lived through it." The judge nodded. Dr. Melanie Cross took the stand. A trauma psychologist with decades of experience in systemic abuse and cult dynamics, she stood with poise, calm, and fire in her eyes. "What you have seen in this courtroom is not a sequence of isolated events," she said. "It is the blueprint of an industrialized psychological machine, built not just to silence, but to erase." She clicked a remote. A diagram appeared, 6 steps in a looping circle. Recruit, isolate, break, brand, silence, discard. "This is the cycle," she said, "used in cults, covert trafficking, and in this case within entertainment infrastructures cloaked in fame." She pointed to each phase. recruit, offer opportunity, isolate, remove external contact, break, manipulate reality, normalize abuse, brand, turn the victim into a product or threat, silence, NDAs, drugs, shame, discard, label them unstable, erase them from public record. She paused. Every survivor you've heard fits this pattern. Nia Rosario, the anonymous nurse, even Gwen's former assistant who never came back from that tour. She tapped her screen again. 2 brain scans appeared. On the left, a healthy baseline. On the right, a scan of someone with sustained trauma response. No bruises, no scars, but unmistakable neurological impact. This is the legacy of Room 7C, a wound you can't see but never forget. Several jurors looked away. One wiped tears. Ariana sat gripping Maya's hand. Gwen folded hers in her lap, silent, unmoving. The absence of bruises, Dr. Cross said quietly, is not the absence of violence. These victims weren't just silenced, they were strategically unmade. The judge allowed one final statement. If power can manipulate perception, then healing must begin with truth. And you, the jury, are now the gatekeepers of that truth. She stepped down. No one applauded, but no one moved either. The prosecution rested. The defense, broken and shrinking, declined to rebut. They had no witnesses, no weight, only silence. The judge gave the jury final instructions. They left the room. Time bent in that waiting. Minutes stretched like aching memories. And then, 4 hours later, the door opened. The jurors filed in. The foreman handed the envelope to the bailiff. The judge read slowly, carefully, every syllable landing like a gavel of its own. On the charges of conspiracy, psychological coercion, unlawful detainment, and obstruction of justice, we find the defendant Diddy guilty on all counts. The courtroom broke not into chaos, but into release. Ariana closed her eyes as tears slipped silently down her cheeks. Gwen put her face in her palms and whispered, "Nia." Maya wept openly. No one looked at Diddy. He stared forward, unmoving. The judge finalized sentencing. The room held its breath one last time. And then it was over. Not just the trial, the silence, the shadow. Outside, the verdict echoed like thunder. Supporters screamed in cathartic joy. Survivors shared stories, emboldened. Artists withdrew from Combus Global in real time. Record labels issued public apologies. Dozens of former employees reached out to the prosecution with more information. But inside, a smaller, more sacred moment unfolded. Gwen, Ariana, and Maya exited the courtroom hand in hand. No handlers, no guards, no red carpet. Just 3 women bound not by fame, but by truth. A reporter asked, "What's next?" Ariana paused, then said softly into the microphone, "We break every room like 7C, one by one, until none of them are left." Days later, a fund was launched in Nia Rosario's name, dedicated to helping whistleblowers, survivors of institutional abuse, and marginalized industry voices find legal and emotional protection. The first donations came from Ariana, Gwen, and Maya. The second wave came from fans, the third from strangers, and the fourth from artists who had once been too afraid to speak. A movement had begun. Not a hashtag, not a trend, a blueprint set on fire, burned by testimony, faith, and an old leather planner that refused to stay hidden. In the hotel room that night, Ariana posted a single photo, her hand holding Nia's final tape recorder. The caption read, "She spoke, so now we listen." And across the world, millions did. The story of Diddy had ended, but the era of silence, too, had ended with him.